Let's get started. So today we'll plan to first have a general discussion about the typical timeline of the recruiting process, and then we'll sort of get into the details of what kind of things you should hope to include in your application package, what kind of things you should do or try not to do during your interview process, and what would happen after the interview. And there will also be some questions that we have collected from the participants who sign up for today's workshop that we will ask the panelists for their thoughts. Okay, so I guess my first question is more of a general one to all four panelists. So the question is, what is the general timeline, or what is the general process of a faculty search in your department, in your institution? For example, when typically you would start posting job advertisements, when would you start doing interviews, and generally, when would you start making decisions about hiring? So who wants to say something first?
I can start.
Yes, please, Alex.
So here in Canada, they are also announced around this time of the year. Actually, there are different departments now with tenure track positions available. The statistics department at McGill has a position. HEC, which is the business school of University of Montreal, also has a tenure track position. But there are other positions in other provinces, like in Waterloo, UBC. And they are usually posted in different places. For example, McGill uses its own system called Workday, but if you want to see a general place, the Statistical Society of Canada has an employment website that has the announcements. I can post it in the chat. And usually these positions that I mentioned, the call is open until November 15th.
Thank you. So perhaps Steve, do you want to share about the timeline at the Ohio State?
Sure. Our timeline is different every single year. And, the reason is that Ohio State, like the other schools that people are at, is a big school, and there's a lot of bureaucracy. And, for us, not only does the department chair have to kind of negotiate with the dean to actually try to get a position, but the formal advertisements have to be approved as well. And so, those of you who follow the Supreme Court decisions know that the U.S. has had some unusual decisions in the recent past. And anytime there's a big decision that comes in, the university actually looks at its processes and decides that there may have to be some changes. And so our processes this year, our search processes are a little different than they were last year or the year before. Every year there's a little bit of a wrinkle. We tried to get ads out early. Our ad just went out earlier this week, and places to look for ads. Good ones are the ASA. It has a kind of a job board. If you're a member of the ASA, there will be sections. And a lot of the announcements get posted to particular sections for the ASA. There are other resources. j-ISBA has a bit. IMS has a bit. There are a couple of universities that run a big job sites. The University of Florida has one that's run for years that a lot of people look at. So look around and find the ads first. Deadlines. The typical deadline is not a deadline, but a target date. But try to hit that target date anyway. This year we have a very early target date at Ohio State. I think October 2nd is when we can start looking at ads. And we try to make that early because we have 4 positions this year, and we'll do some interviews in the fall before the first of the year, and we'll do some in the spring. We'll interview, I'm not sure how many candidates, a dozen, probably more than a dozen between the 4 positions. So be ready. Try to have your application ready to send by, I would say, mid-October. And if you can get it in then, it'll be early enough that you get full consideration for all positions, I think. Yeah.
Fan, you're muted.
You're muted, Fan.
Oops. Yeah. Thank you, Steve, for sharing things about the deadlines and where to look for jobs. So Sudipto, do you have something else?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to say a few things about UCLA. So first of all, I just we also have a tenure track assistant professor position open, and I just put the link there. You can take a look at it. Just a couple of very quick things about California. California is a very unusual state in many ways, and the UC system is massively bureaucratic, and these tenure track lines, or the FTEs, the full-time equivalents as they are known as, are extremely rare to come to us. It's not very common, and particularly UCLA and UC Berkeley don't get these lines very much. But if you do get them, they bring very good packages with them, in terms of retirement packages and everything else. And they're hard money tenure track positions. So even in biostatistics, these are they operate exactly like stat departments, like 9-month hard money. And then you can bring in grants, and there are perks if you bring in grants and so on. So if you look at that website, you will see we are going a little early this year. Usually it is October to December, but this year it's the job was posted August 25th, and you can apply through that system. And I think the last day that they will entertain applications is November 29th. So you have to submit your applications before November 29th. And then the interviews probably will start we follow a quarter system. So the winter quarter, which is basically January through the end of March, but we don't interview a lot. As Steve said, for example, in Ohio State, they're going to interview a dozen. We don't interview that many. We will probably be interviewing at most 6. Maybe 4 or 5, and they are usually these in-person interviews. They are going to be in-person interviews as of now, and they are probably going to run between end of January or early February, and probably get done by early March.
Thank you, Sudipto. And I think Sudipto also shared a link, as well as Steve and Alex, so you can actually copy the link and save the link. And Marina, do you have something to share about RISE?
Yes, at RISE, I don't believe our ads are out yet, so I cannot share anything in the chat, but we do have a position which is going to be open at assistant/associate level. And this is a position in our department. And then we are also going to participate in a school level search on aspects of modern computing, which we think we can fit in that area as well. So we might be able to hire 2 people this year, one through our dedicated line and one through this kind of broader umbrella type of search. But if we are successful in the search, it will be a position in our department. These positions have been approved just last week, so my guess is that we're still working on the ads, and they should go out very, very soon. The usual outlets that Stephen has mentioned, the ASA or the site at University of Florida, they will be posted, of course, on our website. And I think we agreed on a language that we will start reviewing application by a certain date, but the position will stay open. So we might be able to, access and interview later applications as well. At least last year we had, we interviewed for one line, for one position, 4 people, and the interviews happened in January. So by December, by late December, we should have contacted the candidates and have set dates for the interviews. Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
One thing that I'd like to add is this, just a piece of advice. The job ads, it's clear that other universities are like Ohio State. They have to be approved, not just at the department level, but somebody at a higher level of the university, typically a college. And often that approval process puts language in there that seems restrictive. And so, there'll be an ad and there'll be a targeted subfield of statistics or something like that. My advice is apply. And it's free to apply. It costs you nothing. You already are going to have your references lined up, your statement about research, your statement about teaching, a diversity statement. And different schools will ask for something a little bit different, but apply. And the worst thing that can happen is somebody is going to look at this and say, well, it's not the person we're looking for. We really do mean a targeted field. But most of those jobs, the department's view is to make them as open as possible. And the chair's job is to explain to a dean why the person qualifies for whatever special language is in there. But apply. I mean, don't be frightened off and not apply because you say, I don't do big data or whatever the ad happens to say. Just apply. And if people discard your application, they say, well, it's just not a fit. That's okay. But apply. Always apply.
Right. I have a saying exactly on those lines, which is that, since we are all statisticians here, the only probability one event in this whole process is if you don't apply, you won't get the job. The rest, you never know. So I completely agree with Steve. Just go ahead and apply and let the process take over.
Thank you. And this is a great point. And this actually connects to our kind of next question from several of the participants. So people have asked about what exactly would be a smart point to start applying to faculty positions. So some people asked about what's the difference between applying as a PhD student compared with applying as a postdoc? Would the expectations be different? And can someone actually try to apply and get a faculty position and then defer it and do a short postdoc in between? I think this is actually a very common question from a lot of people. And we would definitely like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to go first, but can you just repeat the question? You just crackled up a little bit.
Oh, yes, sure. Yeah, so it's really about whether or not someone should feel comfortable applying to a faculty position as a PhD student. And would you expect different things from a PhD student versus a postdoc? And can someone try to apply and get a faculty position and then do a postdoc in between?
I see. Well, I don't necessarily have to go first, but if you want, I can.
Yeah, Sudipto, why don't you go first?
Okay, thank you. I can speak only from my experience and in the two institutions that I have served. So first of all, in my experience, when we look at an application who's a current PhD student finishing up, as opposed to someone who has a 2-year postdoc, perhaps, we definitely treat it differently, right? Because you basically look at the number of scholarly publications or the overall evidence of scholarship based upon where they are in their career. And similarly, you could be even an assistant professor or visiting assistant professor in some other university for 2 to 3 years and then applying for a job. And they will also be looked at differently. So it's not the same. And when we look at a current PhD student, then basically we try to more focus upon the promise of the research that this individual is bringing in. So the topic in particular is going to be something that is looked at very carefully, the presentation, if that individual has some papers, then what type of papers are they and where have they published? But it's certainly not the quantity as much, because obviously this is a PhD student still learning. But I just want to emphasize that for us, and I think this applies probably to almost all departments, recruiting is an investment, right? So we want to invest in an individual who we believe is going to serve the department well for many, many years to come. So therefore the fit which actually Steve was mentioning. That's one of the most important things that we look at. So how good does the candidate fit into what the vision for the department is, and what the department's mission and the goal is, and so on and so forth. So therefore, it's not at all the case that just because you are a PhD student and you have not as many publications as perhaps someone with a postdoc has, that you will be at a disadvantage. You may well be a better fit in terms of what you're doing and what you are promising for the particular department that you are applying to.
Sounds good. Do other panelists have something to add to this?
Yeah, I think that doing a postdoc could be beneficial if you think that is going to dramatically improve your CV, right? If you do the job market this year and instead you wait 2 years and you do a postdoc and you're going to be such a better candidate, so marketable, then I think that the postdoc is a very good investment. It is true that we were on the market last year and I believe the year before, and probably this is probably a COVID thing, but there have been incredibly strong people on the job market for the past couple of years, 2-3 years, probably people who could not go out during COVID, and so they had to wait, right? And they had incredibly strong CVs. So yes, while it is true that we look at fresh PhDs and postdocs in different ways, it is also true that you are competing with people. You might be competing with people who have like a long list of publications in their CV. So this is something to consider. So again, if you think that a postdoc can substantially strengthen your CV, then it's certainly something that I would encourage. And I think in our questions, there was also something about the years of postdoc. I think, a long postdoc now, it's okay, again, because we're getting out of COVID. So I had a postdoc on the market this year, and he has been with me for 3 years. So which is, it's considered a long postdoc. So I think it's okay. A long postdoc nowadays is okay as well.
Yeah, but I think regarding the long postdoc, I think I would be careful that it doesn't go too long, such that you can give evidence that you have already built up some independence. Yes. I know that between the PhD and the postdoc, you haven't got the independence. You are not expected to have that independence that we expect from someone who is tenured, but you are building up your CV for that, right? So finding the balance, I think it's important. But I agree with what Sudipto and Marina have said here. Also, we judge differently fresh PhDs from postdocs. But if you do decide to do a postdoc, make sure that you make the most out of the time that you spend doing a postdoc, build new networks, so on and so forth.
Yeah, for us, I think that we probably hire more fresh PhDs than we do people coming off of postdocs. It's not too far from 50-50, but absolutely we hire fresh PhDs. And for us, we think of hiring, in fact, in the same way that we think of things like tenure decisions, it's a prediction problem, right? And of course, it's not just random guesses about the future. The future is informed by past performance. But much like Sudipto said, we're looking for people to come to Ohio State and stay for, forever, right? The ideal is, somebody stays for 30 or 40 years. They just settle in and they're a huge contributor to the department in all ways, I should say, not only in terms of research, but in terms of teaching, the quality of educational programs, service for the department, service for the university, connections with the local community. And, that's the dream. That's what we hope. And, when we do it, we already have 20-some faculty. We've got a big faculty, and we're really looking to add people to the group. And that often means bringing in people who have new skills that we simply don't have in our faculty. But we look to the future of the discipline and we say there's growth in some area, and wonderful if we can find people who will fit in and join us, be able to build connections, but also extend us and grow us in particular directions. And those are hard decisions to make. Different people will look at the same applicant and have very different reactions. It does tend to be that some there are very, very positive reactions from many, and there are others who realistically don't look like they have the kind of currency in their research that would fit in at Ohio State, and we're a research-oriented department. We oftentimes, by the way, people with the largest list of publications don't look like the strongest people. They look like they're really good at writing lots of little papers, but maybe not making the bigger contributions that we hope people do make in the long run. Oftentimes I hear applicants say, I need X number of papers to get a job. That's just not the way we look at it. To get an interview, it would be important to have something submitted, right? I mean, if you have no papers submitted, realistically, you won't be interviewed, at least not at Ohio State. But we don't even expect people to necessarily have a formal publication. If they look strong, good letters, and they look interesting, absolutely, we might bring them in for an interview. We'll get, I'm not sure how many we'll get, 120 applicants maybe, in a year. And it doesn't really depend on how many positions we have. This year we have 4, but if we had 1 position or 4 positions, we'll get about the same number of applications. Huge numbers. So apply lots of places is the other thing, because then lots of different committees are going to look at your application, and you're hoping that one says, this is the person for us.
Yeah, if I may just add, was there a question about leaving a job to do a postdoc and then come back, or did I misunderstand that? Was that part of the?
Yeah, I think someone did ask about so if they apply to a faculty position and get the offer, can they do another postdoc kind of in between getting their PhD and starting on the new faculty position?
I mean, of course they can, but it will be an interesting question whether that would be advisable or not. Depending, I mean, I suppose it depends upon the faculty position. I mean, I know personally a person, and actually you know that person too, Fan, who actually had a couple of offers a couple of years ago from faculty position offers, and then decided not to take it at that point, did another postdoc, and then got another faculty position, probably a better and more suitable one. So these sorts of decisions are often a very individual based decision regarding where the person wants to go, where the person wants to live, for example, what the personal situation is, as well as what this individual sees as the prospective professional path being laid out by the offer. So there is no hard and fast rule there. But I agree with everything that Alex, Marina, and Steve said. I don't think postdocs are necessarily going to be detrimental, but at the same time, I don't think they're necessarily advantageous either. I think it's all a matter of how you prepare yourself. And the only one thing I want to add is that on occasion, particularly nowadays with fancy words such as data science coming into the picture and so on, and different types of initiatives being taken almost across the United States, almost across all universities in the US, there is sometimes need for someone to hit the ground running. And in that regard, a postdoc may be advantageous, because if you are working on a rather specialized problem, say, for example, something like Bayesian modeling with quantum computing, right? I mean, and you want to invest in that. It's not a very and you don't go and see, it's not very conspicuous, so it's specialized. But maybe a campus has a lot of initiative in that. Perhaps they have tie-ups with the physics department and data science and so on. And then you can get someone who's actually top-notch in and promising in high-performance computing to try to come and maybe even start teaching a course. In that situation, this is just an example, a fresh PhD may be a little bit overwhelmed by this, rather than somebody who's had a little more time to warm up and establish himself or herself as a postdoc. It's just a very, very subject specific situation here.
Thank you.
In line with Sudipto's comment, last year we just hired a faculty member who asked if they could defer for 1 year to take a very good postdoc. And I had to get the dean's okay, but the answer was absolutely. I mean, this is part of our investment, is to wait a year to have a faculty member, as Sudipto was saying, hit the ground running and come to us with a stronger background. I mean, we would say yes every time to that kind of deferral.
Thank you. And that actually touches on what we are about to discuss next. That is about the application package. So what would you look for in an application package? What's the first document that you open and read? What do you think is the most important piece of material that a candidate should really put some efforts in?
I can start this one. I would say that all documents are important. So before you submit, I strongly suggest that you review it and you ask friends to review it for you to make sure that you don't have any typos. Here, usually the Canadian universities, they require a teaching statement, a research statement, copies of 4 or 5 papers, 3 or 4 reference letters, but one of them must assess your teaching skills. So I usually start by looking at the CV together with the papers that were submitted. And usually here we only receive the letters, at least in my department, we only receive the reference letters from the candidates that were shortlisted. We don't ask for the letters straight away. Actually, this varies from year to year, but lately it has been like this. And then after looking at the CV, I look at the research statement, and I also I'm curious to see how they feel they fit in the department. Because when you apply for a particular department, I strongly suggest that you study the department, that you learn who is there, what are the main research areas that people are involved with in that department, and how do you see yourself in the department? Do you fit, and why? What would you bring to the table? So broadly, these are the aspects that I would be looking at. But make sure that the documents, the cover letter, everything is really well. There are no typos, everything have been reviewed and revised a few times.
And more than that, you should ask your advisor, right, to go through the CV and all the statements. I do multiple iterations on everything with my students and postdocs. Like Alex, I look, I think the CV is the first thing that I grab, and the papers, if there are papers. It's good if you perhaps think about having a website, a well-organized website, because sometimes, I go through a CV, and maybe I see a paper, oh, this is interesting, but it's not one of the 3 papers submitted by the candidate. So for me, it helps if there is a website that I can go to and browse that paper. And Alex said a very, very important thing, just make sure that you study, if you apply to a place that you know where the place is, who is there, the work that they do, and you put some of it in the cover letter. The cover letter is important because in the cover letter, you want to explain why you think that you are a fit to the department. And so you have to put something as, why do you think that you can be a fit for Rice University? And people will look for that. We at Rice will look for that indication from you. So that's a very important piece of the application as well, the cover letter. I think the CV, research statement, and papers, because they give an idea of your area, your work, and what you do, and then the cover letter gives an idea about how serious you are about applying to that particular position. Yeah, I think that's all. That's all I have for now. Yeah.
I would say, CV, I mean, just do a nice job on it, obviously. There are good and bad CVs in a sense, I would say, and not everyone holds my views, I'll say. Something that to me comes across very poorly is a CV which has a lot of exaggeration in it. So if I read through the CV and it just comes across that kind of the truth is being stretched in odd ways, for me, I just look at it and say, this is probably not the person that we want to bring in and have just join our group forever and ever and ever. So, positive portrayal is a wonderful thing. I mean, you want to do that in a CV. Certainly you want to do that in your research statement and your other materials. And yet, if it comes across as it's sort of just overly much self-promotion, that can backfire.
Steven, can you give some examples?
Examples. The kinds of examples of things that maybe don't come across well. Well, I mean, so number one, if you're writing papers, don't send them to the predatory journals where you pay money to publish your papers, so you have more papers published, right? People kind of understand what those journals are, and that actually looks bad if you're publishing in those journals to most of our faculty, right? So that would be an example where, it wouldn't be exaggeration, but it would be building a CV in a way that is just not helpful. For others, sometimes people have categories that they're put on their CV, and they kind of stretch things too much, right? If you have a travel award, you win a student paper award, that's wonderful, and describe it as a student paper award or something like that. But you could use other language that makes it seem like a very different kind of award, and that's probably not a good thing to do. So you want your CV to come across as honest, because people want to hire good, honest folks. Research statement really matters, and what we often look for in a research statement is a description of research, which is not just a kind of a catalog or a list of things, but something we read it and we say, oh, it looks like this person really knows what they're doing. I mean, they're doing research. They have a clear idea of what they've done. There's probably a section in there about where they want to go. Research that's not yet done, but where they're heading. And a well-written research statement just has an impact. And as Marina said, have your advisor look over your research statement. They've probably seen lots and lots of applications. And they can say, yeah, this one resonates, it looks good, or back to the table, try to rewrite a little bit and re-describe your research. A research statement, very, very important as well. Question about letters of recommendation. Those are out of your control, right? I mean, not direct control. They're written by other people. They should be written by other people. And if anybody asks you to give them a draft of a letter of recommendation, that's somebody you don't want to work with, right? I mean, that's just not done in the world of statistics. And hopefully nobody does, but that would be a danger sign. You might want to turn to someone else to write your letter of recommendation in a case like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I largely agree. In fact, I agree with everything that Alex and Marina and Steve said. So I don't want to repeat what they said already. I just want to probably add a couple of quick things. Again, for us also, the CV, the personal statements or the research statements and the letters of reference are all important. We definitely look through it fairly carefully. With regard to what some of the things that Steve was saying about this CV inflation sort of phenomenon, one of the things that I actually advise my students, or even junior colleagues with whom I have worked, is that your application should not give the appearance of desperation and in any way whatsoever. So it should not feel like I am desperate to get this job, and that sort of mentality is what sometimes unconsciously leads to CV inflation. That should be avoided, and that's where I think Marina's point about having your advisor look at it is very important, because your advisor obviously has some stake in you getting the job, but he or she is not directly applying. So you have a kind of a neutral pair of eyes to go over it. And so that's good. The other thing I do want to mention is that, CVs, you don't make your CV overnight. It's a process. So the process starts obviously long time back, because after all, what is going to be in the CV is something that I'm sure you have been preparing for a while, right? What types of papers are you writing? What types of projects are you involved in? What is the topic that you want to pursue? And that all builds the CV. And then, of course, news. I don't think you should. Remember, you're not applying for a jazzy salesman's job, even though there is some salesmanship in research as well. But you don't want to appear as if you're selling a car or a jewelry. So therefore, don't over glamorize your CV, and not just in terms of inflation. That's obviously an important part, but also in terms of the layout, the aesthetics of the CV should come out as something appropriate for academia, or even for a company where you're applying for a research job. I think we've been focusing a lot on academia, but I suppose, many of you will be applying for research positions, perhaps in big tech companies like Google and so on. And I do not have as much experience in that domain, but I have students who have actually joined, and we try to keep the CV focused on what makes you strong.
Yes,
and the research statement, just one quick thing. It is very important here, because that is the one area where they can see how well you write. And remember, if you want to be a successful academician, then you could have varying levels of mathematical prowess and varying levels of computing prowess. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is you have to write well. Because if you cannot communicate in writing well, your papers are not going to go anywhere, no matter how much of mathematics you have put in.
Yeah, thank you for this really well-rounded discussion about the application package. I think we've covered a lot of points about what to do, what not to do, what's important, what kind of things should deserve more attention, and so on. Now we can move a little bit forward and assume that if someone gets shortlisted and they move on to the interview stage, so what kind of things would happen in an interview? So suppose let's think about an on-campus, on-site interview. What is the interview schedule typically like? What should someone expect out of the interviews? And of course, it would be awesome if you can also share the criteria that you use to evaluate candidates. If there are criteria that you would internally use, that would be really helpful as well. Alex, do you want to start first?
Sure, no problem. Here, typically, as I said before, the top 3-4 candidates are invited for interviews. They spend the day in the department. Usually the day start meeting with the chair. It's a meeting that lasts 30 minutes. Then there is a meeting with the search committee. Usually the search committee has 5 members, so it's the whole committee with the candidate, and this lasts usually for 1 hour. And then throughout the day, the candidate meets with other faculty members. One thing that I like is that lunch usually is held with the graduate students, such that they can meet the students, and the students also evaluate the candidate, the hour that they spend with the candidate, and they give a seminar, and the day ends with the dinner with some faculty members. I don't remember if you had another question.
Yes, things you look for.
Okay. I think Steve mentioned it from the beginning, and he has been repeating it. Basically, as Steve said, we are trying to hire a person who hopefully will come and stay and collaborate to the growth of the department, bring new areas of research, be a team player. I think it's really important. I think all of us are looking for people who will be team players. Yeah, Steve has already pointed out many characteristics that we are looking for.
Perhaps Marina, do you have things to share about interviews?
Yes. So first of all, before an on-campus interview, we do Zoom interviews now. So typically for one position, we would interview over Zoom 8 to 10 people, and then invite 4 to visit campus. So the Zoom interview is also very important. And again, you should make sure that you prepare for that, right? Before you talk to people at Rice, that you have looked at the Rice department, that you know who is there, what we do, and everything. Because there have been cases where, we jump on Zoom and we say, so what do you think about the stat department? Then you sort of see the person opening the Google, the internet, and Googling our department. So it's not that you don't want to do that, right? So just be prepared. And then, so for the on-campus interview, I mean, what Alex said applies here as well. There is this schedule where you meet all the people, all the faculty, all the students. You might meet the dean of the school, of the college, and you go out for lunch with students, with some of the faculty. At Rice, you also meet some faculty from other departments, because we're in the College of Engineering, and there's a lot of interdisciplinary research going on, and different events and activities between the different departments. So we also look at that aspect in a person, whether the person can fit in our department, but also in the college together with the other departments. And so we give opportunity to the candidates to interact with faculty from other departments within the College of Engineering as well. Just to connect to something that Sudipto said before, just don't appear desperate, right? Because we are interviewing you, but you are interviewing us as well, and this is a very important thing to keep in mind, right? You are also visiting Rice because you want to see if Rice is the place for you, right? And you don't want to prove Rice that you are the right candidate, right? So there has to be balance. It has to be a balanced process for it to be successful on both sides. That's it.
Who's next? Should I go or? Okay.
Yes, please, Sudipto.
I think I completely agree, and I think in terms of our experience, we don't do the Zoom interviews though. I don't think we have the bandwidth. We are not a very big department, and I think always there seems to always be a rush in UCLA in terms of organizing these things. So therefore, we go directly with a selection of candidates who come on campus. I would like to just say, be yourself to the extent possible. Keep it simple. What you don't want to show is you know more than you actually do. So that means, be humble, but at the same time, be confident about what you do. Because you, after all, know your research better than probably most people who will be interviewing you. And as Marina said, it goes both ways. So you will have to like the interviewees, or rather the interviewers, and then they will have to like you. And so obviously you don't want to show too much of an attitude, not being a prima donna, not try to keep a balance between what you would like from the department and what you would like to offer to the department. It should not be one way. It should not come out as whole 20, like the 2 days or whatever you were on campus, everybody felt, oh, this person just asked about what they want from us, but what would that individual be interested in doing should also come across. So keep it simple, and for the most part, just be yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's our process much the same as the others. We do start with the Zoom interview. And you know, some of the people will be invited for in-person interviews, but not all, right? You know, we do a little bit of screening in that Zoom interview. You know, we'll see 20 or 30 people that we would love to bring to campus who apply, and we simply cannot bring everyone to campus. I think Sudipto hit it perfectly when he said, "Be yourself." You know, if you think about the whole job search process, it's kind of a matching of candidates and positions at some level. There are a lot of jobs now. It's not that there are 5 jobs across the whole country and you're desperate to get one of them. You know, there are quite a few jobs. Not everybody will necessarily end up with a job of their choice, but there are quite a few jobs. And you know, if you think about things for the long run, and you know, people hope that you are thinking long run. If you have to trick a school into hiring you by not being yourself, that's not the place where you want to be, right? And in the long run, it can't possibly work out well. So be yourself. And you know, as Sudipto says, you know your research. Talk about your research, right? And in the seminar, one of the things that we look for in the seminar, the questions afterward, the individual conversations, is whether someone seems to be very question of what comes from the advisor and what comes from the person themselves, the applicant. And at the end of the day, you know, if we're convinced that the person really knows their stuff, that goes over very well. Occasionally, it's very occasionally, we sort of look at it and we say, boy, that's good work, but it didn't seem the person understood what they were doing. And that does not come across well. But just be yourself, and you know, it'll help you relax. And just by relaxing and being yourself, the whole process of the interview will go smoother, it'll go better. You'll connect with the people who you talk to for a half an hour in their office or something like that. You'll just make the connections better, and it'll be smoother, more enjoyable, but it'll also be a better interview in the end. So be yourself is really the big thing.
Yeah, thank you to all of you for sharing really valuable perspectives. Yes, Marina.
Yeah. If I can, I have 2 practical things that came to mind in the meantime.
Yes,
One is don't be afraid to ask the same questions to everybody, right? And sometimes it happens that you get fatigued throughout the day, and then you get to the end of the day, you meet a new faculty, and so, oh, I don't have questions for you. I've already asked all the questions. No matter, ask all the questions again, even if you know the answers. Just ask the questions again, because otherwise that person's going to be, you know, left out from the process. And about Sudipto's point about not being a prima donna, that's also very important aspect. You know, this is a webinar for sponsored by j-ISBA, right? So I'm assuming you're working in Bayesian statistics, but you will be visiting departments like Rice University, where, you know, there are some Bayesian statisticians and some are not. So it's important that, you know, that you show interest in everybody's research, and that you just don't focus on the Bayesian statisticians just because they work in your area, because again, they will not, it will work against you eventually in a, you know, in a faculty decision at the end of the process. So those were just 2 practical things that I've noticed in you know, people coming for interviews at Rice.
Those are fantastic points. Yes, please.
Well, you know, one extra thing that I should make sure I say. The U.S. has a lot of strict fair hiring laws. And so, for example, when we're interviewing people, we cannot ask about a family. We can't ask if people are concerned about the schools, because that is on the edge of asking them if they have kids. We can't ask if they have a spouse who also will be looking for a job. We're forbidden to ask those questions. And yet, if a candidate brings them up, then we can talk about them. And so if you have questions about, you're coming to, Columbus or Houston or, Los Angeles or Montreal, they're all big cities, so there are lots of jobs. But if you have a concern about a potential job for a spouse or a fiance or something like that, bring it up and talk to people and initiate a conversation. And then people can talk and they can tell you what resources are available on campus. So I would say don't be afraid to bring issues like that up. Departments, would like to make things work for anyone that they're thinking about hiring and bringing on board. But there are things that we simply cannot talk about. And, that's the only way you're going to hear about those issues because of the fair hiring laws. Canada, I don't know what the situation is, as far as what conversations can be had or not. But if you have questions, ask, because some things nobody can ask about on the other side.
Absolutely fantastic point. I think many young researchers, early career scholars often shy away from asking these questions, thinking that if they ask this will hamper their chances or dampen the enthusiasm at the other end. Absolutely not. In fact, the way I look at it is that if you have a concern, you bring it up, and a good department that really wishes that you want to be a part of should actually go ahead and try to do something for you. If it is a case that a department where you raise this genuine issue about your family or a two-body issue or a child care matter, and that is held against you, then you are better off not being in that department.
Fantastic points discussed here. Before we wrap up with final questions, I want to open the floor up to all the participants here on Zoom and see if anyone has any questions that we haven't talked about today, just to see if anyone wants to say something or just ask a question.
I can volunteer to ask a quick question.
Yes.
Just to introduce myself, I'm Satvik. I'm a postdoc at University of Michigan. So my question is it a good idea to prepare research statements separately for statistics and biostatistics departments? And what would be the suggestions to tailor the applications for a particular department? Any recommendations would be very helpful, please. Thank you.
I can go first. So this is a good question, but I think more than distinguishing or categorizing it just statistics versus biostatistics, I would say, this is again just me personally speaking, perhaps the other members would have a different take on it. You should probably look at the department specifically and see what you're applying for. By and large, the stat departments and the biostat departments in the peer institutions across the country still value pretty much, broadly speaking, similar topics and similar sort of vein of research. So for example, obviously, if you have like nothing else, then a biostat department will probably not, in fact, be a very good home for you, and it won't be good for you, and it won't be good for the department. On the other hand, if you have a blend of methodology and application and collaborations rather, then absolutely, you don't probably need to change much. You should be just genuinely honest and say that, look, I am interested in methodology, but my methodological or even theoretical research is motivated by problems that come to me from scientists or public health professionals or doctors or whatever. And so, in many cases it'll be fine. You don't have to change. But there are certain departments. For example, like let's say, for example, if you're going to like Sloan Kettering, Memorial Cancer Center, and there is a very strong data science group there, but they're very focused and specific on the type of research that they want to do. For example, transcriptomics, spatial transcriptomics, or something like that. And in that case, you probably need to tune your research statement towards that particular department. So in other words, try to line up your research statement with the mission of the department that you are applying to, rather than categorizing it as statistics or biostatistics. In many, many cases, like for example, I mean, here, for example, the 4 panelists that we have, that you have here, our departments, some biostat, some stat, we still pretty much there's massive overlap in our interests. So I don't think you really need to tune or specifically write 4 different research statements, whether you're applying to McGill or Rice or Ohio State or UCLA. But if you, as I said, if you're going to particularly a genetics institute, for example, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, there is a lot of very intellectually stimulating statistical work that can be done there. You might have that might be your interest. Then you will probably need to tune your research statement towards that.
Yeah, just quick along those lines. Certainly, we're the statistics department at Ohio State, but we have people who are full-on biostat people, just part of our department. And if you look at their research, it's straight up genetics for Sheely Lin, who is well. You have others as well who are, I mean, people are doing what they're doing, and we want good people here. And so, not a lot of tailoring would be needed for us.
Any other panelists who want to chime in on this? Alex or Marina, anything else to add? Okay, great. So
hi, my name is Chang from.
Okay, yeah.
My name is Chang from Texas
one last
A&M.
question, please.
And I have quick questions on the Zoom screening interview before the on-site interview. So how is it different from on-site interview? Is it something similar to give a research talk? What's the important aspect you look for the Zoom screening interview to choose the candidate to on-site interview?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely different from the we typically ask these questions to everybody in terms of, like, we ask the candidate to let us know a little bit about his research, and then his motivation for applying to Rice, and then a little bit about maybe his future aspiration, right? What the type of position that he's looking for, and maybe the type of research that he thinks he will want to do in the future. So it's mainly like, to get a feel of the person and of the interest of the person in us. So it allows us to, get down from this list of 8-10 people that we are looking at down to the 4 that we want to invite to campus. But it is indeed very different from the on-campus interview. And at least at Rice, the Zoom interview process is done only by the committee, by the hiring committee. So the 4 faculty typically on the committee, not the entire department, while the on-campus interview is done by the entire department. Yeah, that's all I have.
For us, there'd be only 2 people on our side on the Zoom call, so it's not quite. So part of what those Zoom calls are about is a screening based on communication skills. Is one of the things that we look for when people do the on-site interview. We ask a question essentially: could we have this person stand in front of a big class of undergraduates, 40, 50, 60, and teach comfortably in English? Would it be a good experience for the students in that class? And part of that is concerned about English skills, but also just communication back and forth. It's kind of questions, and do people respond? Have they understood the question and kind of answer in a reasonable way? And so, part of it is just a quick screen on teaching. And because we can only bring a limited number of people in for on-site interviews, we rather bring in people where everybody we bring in, when they come to campus, we're thinking, boy, this could be the person we really want to hire. So part of it is that. Secondary screen, which is a little bit weaker, is a question of whether people seem to really understand their own research. You write the do a lot of editing on that research statement, and so part of the conversation is always about research. And can someone talk about their research? Do they seem to understand it? If people probe a little bit gently, just with a question or two, it's not huge technical stuff, but is there a comfort level with it? Is part of what we're looking for.
Alex and Sudipto, any more to add to this final question before we wrap up?
I mean, we, as I said, I don't know what's going to happen this year, but we have conventionally not have had Zoom interviews in UCLA, so I don't have a lot of experience with that, unlike Steve and Marina. So I don't have a lot to add. But I think during COVID, we did have Zoom interviews, but they were not preliminary interviews. They were just full-fledged interviews, so not very different from what we have now in person. It may well be the case that we are also going to move into the model that Rice and Ohio State is following. Department anymore, so the current chair, Professor Centuk, will know more about it. But so yeah, I don't have a lot more to add on that. Thank you.
Alex, anything else to add? Okay, great. So I think we are slightly over time already, so let's wrap up today's conversation. Again, I would like to express gratitude to the 4 panelists who carve out time from their busy schedules to join us at our workshop. And again, thank you all to the participants who sign up and join us live on Zoom. We also have recorded the session, so if you want to review some of the conversations we had today, or if you want to just share the recording with your friends, colleagues, then we'll very soon send out some kind of YouTube link or some online link so that you can look at the recording and share with other people. Again, this is the end of today's workshop. Thank you so much for being here today. Wish you a nice rest of the week. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
for organizing.
Thank you.
Bye. Good luck, everyone.
Bye.